In the heart of the kingdom of Ildoria, where the whispers of royalty mingled with the bustling of common folk, a fateful encounter unfolded. Prince Jungkook, the epitome of strength and power, stood in the grand chamber of the palace, his father's stern gaze piercing through him like a sword. Jungkook, with his towering stature and commanding presence, exuded an aura of authority that demanded respect. His cold, calculating eyes bore into those around him, revealing nothing of the turmoil that raged within. He was a prince burdened by the weight of his own ego, a man ruled by his pride and his anger. Before him stood Kim Yen, a vision of ethereal beauty amidst the opulence of the palace. Her delicate features and graceful demeanor only served to accentuate Jungkook's own sense of power and masculinity. And yet, despite her beauty, she was a thorn in his side, a constant reminder of his own vulnerability. Yen, with her quiet strength and unwavering resolve, stood tall in the face of adversity. She had faced hardship and loss with courage and dignity, never once allowing herself to be cowed by the challenges that life had thrown her way. She was a woman of substance, a force to be reckoned with in her own right. As the king outlined the terms of the arrangement, Jungkook's mind seethed with anger. Marrying Yen was not a choice, but a decree handed down by his father, a demand that he marry for the sake of the kingdom's stability. He despised her for it, despised her for the way she had disrupted the carefully constructed facade of his life. And so, it is settled, the king concluded, his voice echoing through the chamber with finality. You will marry Kim Yen, and together you will ensure the prosperity of our kingdom. Jungkook's jaw clenched with barely contained rage, his fists balling at his sides. He longed to lash out, to defy his father's will and assert his own dominance. But he knew that such actions would only bring further disgrace upon his already tarnished reputation. Yen stepped forward, her eyes ablaze with determination. I accept, she declared, her voice ringing clear and unwavering. I accept this union, not out of obligation, but out of duty to my family and to the kingdom. The prince's gaze bore into her with a venomous intensity. He despised her for her beauty, for the way she had unwittingly become a pawn in his father's game. And yet, there was a part of him that couldn't help but admire her strength and resilience. As the courtiers bustled around them, making preparations for the upcoming wedding, Jungkook found himself drawn to Yen's side. There was a fire in her eyes now, a defiance that mirrored his own, and for the first time, he felt a flicker of something akin to respect. But even as he struggled to contain his anger, Jungkook couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of his stomach. There was more to this arrangement than met the eye, more secrets waiting to be uncovered. And as he watched Yen disappear into the throng of courtiers, a seed of doubt took root in his mind. What was she hiding? And why did he feel drawn to unravel the mystery that surrounded her? Little did he know, their fates were intertwined in ways he could never have imagined, their destinies bound by a thread of fate that stretched across time and space. And as the days passed and the wedding drew nearer, Jungkook couldn't shake the feeling that their union would be the beginning of something far greater than either of them could have ever imagined. In the days leading up to the wedding, the palace buzzed with anticipation, but for Prince Jungkook, it was a storm brewing within him. His thoughts were a tempest of conflicting emotions, swirling with resentment, frustration, and a simmering anger that threatened to boil over at any moment. As he strode through the opulent corridors of the palace, Jungkook's mind was consumed by thoughts of Kim Yen, the woman he was to marry. She was an enigma to him, a puzzle he couldn't quite solve, and the thought of being bound to her filled him with a sense of unease he couldn't shake. In the depths of the royal library, amidst shelves lined with ancient tomes and dusty scrolls, Jungkook found himself drawn to Yen. She sat at a table, her delicate features illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight, her brow furrowed in concentration as she pored over a thick volume. Approaching her, Jungkook's steps echoed off the marble floors, a symphony of his inner turmoil. Yen, he greeted tersely, his voice a low growl that betrayed the anger simmering beneath the surface. Yen glanced up, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. Your Highness, she acknowledged, her tone polite but guarded. As they spoke, tension hung heavy in the air between them, thick as a fog rolling in from the sea. Jungkook's resentment boiled beneath his skin, threatening to spill over with each passing moment, and Yen's guarded demeanor only served to stoke the flames of his anger. Why did you agree to this marriage? He demanded, his voice sharp with accusation. Was it out of duty? Or perhaps you have ambitions beyond your station? Yen's eyes flashed with defiance, her spine stiffening as she met his gaze head-on. I have my reasons, Your Highness, she replied evenly, her voice steady despite the turmoil swirling within her. But Jungkook was not satisfied with her answer. His anger bubbled to the surface, a roiling inferno that threatened to consume them both. In a moment of unchecked rage, he lashed out, his words a cruel onslaught aimed at the woman who stood before him. You're nothing but a pawn in my father's game, he spat, his voice dripping with contempt. A commoner like you could never understand the weight of responsibility that comes with being royalty. The words hung between them, heavy as lead, as Yen recoiled from his verbal assault. Her eyes welled with tears, but she refused to let them fall, her pride refusing to be broken by the prince's cruelty. And in that moment, Jungkook felt a rush of satisfaction wash over him, a twisted pleasure in the pain he had caused. He reveled in the sight of Yen's hurt, relishing the power he held over her. But their confrontation was interrupted by the arrival of Jungkook's sister, Princess Sooyoung. She swept into the library with all the grace of royalty, her eyes alight with malice as they fell upon Yen. Well, what do we have here? Sooyoung purred, her voice dripping with venom. Our dear prince's little plaything, I see. Yen's eyes widened in fear as Sooyoung advanced, her every movement predatory. Leave her alone, Sooyoung, Jungkook growled, his voice a low warning. But Sooyoung paid him no heed, her attention solely focused on Yen. With a wicked smile, she reached out and grabbed Yen's wrist, her grip like iron. You're in for a world of pain, little commoner, Sooyoung hissed, her nails digging into Yen's flesh. And I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. As Yen winced in pain, Jungkook felt a surge of rage course through him. How dare his sister lay a hand on his betrothed? How dare she inflict such cruelty upon someone so undeserving? With a swift motion, he stepped between them, his stance protective. That's enough, Sooyoung, he snarled, his voice a dangerous growl. Leave her alone. Sooyoung's eyes flashed with anger, but she released her grip on Yen's wrist, her lips twisting into a malicious grin. This isn't over, little commoner, she spat, before turning on her heel and stalking from the library. As the door slammed shut behind her, Jungkook turned to Yen, his heart heavy with anger and frustration. He had stopped his sister's assault, but he felt no remorse for his actions. If anything, he felt a sick satisfaction in seeing Yen cower before him, in knowing that he held the power to hurt her. And as he stood there, his gaze cold and unfeeling, Jungkook knew that their journey was far from over. But he had no intention of making things right, no desire to earn Yen's forgiveness. She was nothing to him but a pawn in his father's game, a means to an end, and he would do whatever it took to ensure his own survival. In the serene embrace of the palace gardens, Yen sought solace beneath the gentle moonlight. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of crickets provided a comforting backdrop as she wandered along the winding pathways, lost in thought. But her tranquility was shattered when she stumbled upon Prince Jungkook, his silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. He stood at the edge of a tranquil pond, his posture tense and his expression unreadable as he stared out into the darkness. Approaching him tentatively, Yen's heart fluttered with uncertainty. Your Highness, she began softly, her voice carrying a note of concern. Is everything all right? Jungkook turned to face her, his features marred by a scowl that sent a shiver down Yen's spine. What do you want, Yen? He snapped, his voice sharp and cold. Taken aback by his harsh tone, Yen faltered for a moment before gathering her composure. I just wanted to check on you, she stammered, her words tinged with uncertainty. Jungkook's scowl deepened, his eyes flashing with irritation. I don't need your pity, he spat, his words cutting through the night air like a knife. I don't need anything from you. Yen recoiled as if struck, her heart sinking like a stone in her chest. She had hoped to offer him comfort, to bridge the gap between them, but his words only served to widen the chasm that separated them. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to intrude. With that, she turned on her heel and fled from the garden, her steps heavy with the weight of rejection. Tears stung at her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to let Jungkook see her weakness. As she retreated to the safety of her chambers, Yen couldn't shake the feeling of hurt and betrayal that gnawed at her from within. She had tried to reach out to Jungkook, to offer him kindness in the face of his pain, but he had rejected her, pushing her away with his cold indifference. In the darkness of her room, Yen's thoughts raced with questions, doubts that threatened to consume her. She didn't understand why Jungkook treated her with such disdain, why he seemed determined to push her away at every turn. But amidst the turmoil of her emotions, one thing was clear, she couldn't allow herself to be consumed by sadness and self-doubt. She had to find a way to rise above Jungkook's cruelty, to find strength in the face of adversity, whatever the cost. And with that resolve burning bright in her heart, Yen vowed to stand tall in the face of adversity, to never let anyone dim the light within her. As the echoes of their fractured encounter lingered in the air, Yen found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. She couldn't shake the sting of Jungkook's harsh words, nor the ache in her heart at the realization of his disdain for her. In the days that followed, Yen tried to bury herself in her duties, seeking solace in the routine of palace life. But no matter how busy she kept herself, she couldn't escape the memory of Jungkook's rejection, the way he had pushed her away with such callous indifference. She found herself haunted by thoughts of him, her mind constantly replaying their encounter in the garden. She wondered what she had done to deserve such cruelty, what she could do to mend the rift between them. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find the answers she sought. And as the days turned into weeks, Yan felt herself sinking deeper into despair, the weight of Jungkook's rejection pressing down on her like a leaden shroud. Yet amidst the darkness that threatened to consume her, a flicker of determination burned bright within Yan's heart. She refused to let Jungkook's cruelty define her, refused to let him break her spirit with his cold indifference. With a steely resolve, Yan vowed to rise above the pain and forge her own path forward. She knew that she couldn't change Jungkook's feelings towards her, but she refused to let his disdain diminish her worth. And as she stood on the precipice of uncertainty, Yan knew that she was stronger than she had ever realized. She may have been bruised and battered by Jungkook's cruelty, but she refused to let it defeat her. For she was a woman of resilience and strength, and she would not be broken by the callousness of a prince who couldn't see her worth.